a little girl was waiting at home in Paradise, Texas. It was the last day of November 2022, the kind of cold afternoon where you could see your breath in the air. She was 7 years old, full of life, full of questions, and somewhere down that quiet country road, a brown delivery van was heading straight toward her front door, carrying a Christmas present. By nightfall, Athena Strand would be gone, and the monster who took her had been standing right on her doorstep. Paradise, Texas is the kind of town most people drive through without stopping. Population under 500, a single main road, wide open land in every direction, and the kind of quiet that makes city people nervous. Wise County sits about 50 miles northwest of Fort Worth, and the people who live out there tend to know their neighbors, leave their doors unlocked, and let their kids play outside without much worry. For Jacob Strand and his wife Ashley, it was home. And in late November 2022, their 7-year-old, Athena, was staying with them for the holiday season. Before heading back to her mother in Oklahoma, Athena was the kind of kid who ran at you full speed when she saw you coming, arms wide open, screaming your name like you were the best person in the whole world. Her uncle Elijah later said that watching her run toward him like that was one of the last memories he had of her. She had big dreams. She wanted to be an astronaut. She wanted to be a dancer. She wanted to be anything and everything. The way 7-year-olds do when the world still feels wide open and safe. On November 30, 2022, the world stopped being safe for Athena Strand. That afternoon, a FedEx delivery van pulled up to the Strand property. Nothing unusual. The holidays were in full swing, and packages were arriving at homes all across Wise County. This one was a Christmas present for Athena. A box of You Can Be Anything Barbies. Someone who loved her had picked it out specially, something that matched who she was and who she was going to become. The driver climbed out and walked the package to the door. His name was Tanner Horner. He was 31 years old. He lived near Lake Worth, Texas. He had no criminal record. He was not someone who raised red flags. He was just a delivery driver doing a route on a Wednesday afternoon. But something happened on that doorstep, something that Athena's stepmother would later describe as ordinary. She thought Athena was just playing outside. She thought she was hiding the way kids do. She called for her. She looked around the yard. She checked the house. Athena was not hiding. Athena was gone. By evening, the search was on. More than 200 community members showed up. Neighbors, volunteers, law enforcement officers from across Wise County. They all came out. They walked fields. They checked roads. They called her name into the dark. For 2 days, Athena Strand was missing, and for 2 days, Tanner Horner knew exactly where she was. On December 2, 2022, investigators found Athena Strand's body. Time for the detectives to drop the hammer. She was less than 10 miles from her father's home. She had been left near the Trinity River. She was 7 years old, and what had been done to her was something that no family should ever have to learn about the person they loved most. Law enforcement moved quickly. Cell records, delivery logs, camera footage from the FedEx van. Everything pointed in one direction. Tanner Horner was arrested and charged with aggravated kidnapping and capital murder. Now came the part that would haunt everyone who heard it. When investigators sat down with Horner, he talked. And what he said was a story that kept changing shape, the way a lie does when someone is trying to find the version that sounds the least monstrous. He told them he had accidentally struck Athena with his delivery van near the road. He said she wasn't seriously hurt. He said he panicked. He said he didn't know what to do, so he picked her up, placed her in the van, and drove away, nens exsignum. Then he said he tried to break her neck. When that didn't work, he strangled her with his hands. He disposed of her body and drove back out to continue his deliveries. That was his explanation. That was what he called a panic. The district attorney, James Stainton, looked at that story and called it exactly what it was. Lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. But there was something else inside that FedEx van that Horner didn't account for. a recording device. From the moment Athena was taken, the van's system was capturing everything. Every single thing that happened inside that vehicle was preserved on tape. It would become the most devastating piece of evidence in the entire case. And when jurors heard it years later in a Fort Worth courtroom, several of them wept. The recording begins with motion. Horner lifting Athena into the van, the doors closing, the engine running, and then his voice, calm and controlled, telling a 7-year-old girl not to scream. He asks her questions. How old are you? What school do you go to? Questions that feel almost normal. Until you remember that this child is terrified, sitting in a stranger's delivery van on a cold November afternoon, and no one knows where she is. He stops the van. He tells her they are going to hang out. When he tells her to take off her shirt, Athena starts crying. She asks him what he is doing. She asks him if he is a kidnapper. She asks to go home. And then she asks him the question that stops everyone who hears it cold. Why are you doing this? Horner answers, because you are pretty. And Athena Strand, 7 years old, in the dark of a stranger's van, says something back that broke an entire nation when they heard it. My mom says I can't do that to somebody, and you can't do that to me either. At one point on the recording, Horner tells her, if you don't shut up, I will hurt you worse. And then the audio continue, screaming, choking, slamming, and then silence. The medical examiner who testified at trial said Athena Strand died of blunt force injuries with smothering and strangulation. She never made it home for Christmas. She never got it home for Christmas. She never got to open those Barbies. She never got to go back to her mother in Oklahoma. She never got to grow up. The case sat in the court system for years. Wise County is a small place, and finding a jury pool that had not already formed strong opinions about Tanner Horner was nearly impossible. The trial was eventually moved to Tarrant County, to the Tim Curry Criminal Justice Center in Fort Worth. It began on April 7, 2026, and before the first witness was called, before the first piece of evidence was entered, Tanner Horner stood up and pleaded guilty. Guilty to capital murder of a person under the age of 10. Guilty to aggravated kidnapping. He said yes, he did it. He killed her. And just like that, the trial became something else entirely. Not about whether he was guilty. Everyone already knew that. Now it was about what the rest of his life was going to look like. Death or life in prison. The punishment phase of a capital murder trial is its own kind of proceeding. Both sides get to make their case, not just about what happened, but about who the person is and whether they can ever be safe to exist anywhere on this earth. The prosecution went first. They played the audio from the van. They showed photographs of Athena's clothing. Costa de Santanus. They brought in DNA analysts, crime scene experts, and investigators who walked the jury through every step of what Horner had done, from the moment he arrived at that doorstep to the moment he led police to where he had left her body. And then they played the audio again. Because once was not enough to make sure the jury understood exactly what Athena Strand experienced in the last hour of her life. The defense had a difficult job. There was no questioning the facts. Horner had pleaded guilty. The evidence was what the district attorney later called overwhelming and terrible, and that was actually the word his own defense team used in their opening statement. So they went a different direction. They told the jury about Horner's childhood, about his mother, who had drunk heavily during her pregnancy. They said Horner had been diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, a condition that causes emotional and cognitive problems that follow a person their entire life. They said he had autism. They said he had been exposed to a massive amount of lead. They said his problems began before he was even born. Defense attorney Susan Anderson stood in front of the jury and asked them to be merciful. She asked them to choose life in prison instead of death. The prosecution had a response to all of it. District Attorney James Stainton told the jury something simple. He told them that the death penalty exists for a reason, that it is reserved for the most extreme cases. The cases where what happened is so far outside the bounds of human decency that there is no other answer. And then he told them that Tanner Horner was proof of why parents hug their children a little tighter before they go outside. He was proof of why children are nervous to play in their own yards. He was proof of why a box of Christmas Barbies sitting on a doorstep can feel like the beginning of a nightmare that never ends. The prosecution rested. The defense rested. Closing arguments were delivered, and the jury went to deliberate. During the trial, something else came out about Tanner Horner that painted an even stranger picture of who he was. When Texas Ranger Sergeant Job Espinoza sat down with Horner during the initial investigation in December 2022, Horner started behaving in a way that Espinoza described as disturbing. Horner told him about an alter ego, a separate identity he called Zero. And when he shifted into it, something physical happened. His head tilted sideways. His eyes rolled back. He began speaking differently, answering questions about Athena through this persona he had invented. Espinoza testified that he watched Horner's entire demeanor change when he became Zero, like a switch being flipped. The prosecution said it was manipulation. Performance. Another lie in a long series of lies from a man who had been lying since the moment the van doors closed. Whether it was real or theatrical, one thing was certain. Tanner Horner had thought about what he was going to say long before he said it. And in that same interrogation, after admitting to kidnapping and killing a 7-year-old girl, Horner made one final request. He asked investigators to release him from jail for 1 month, so he could spend one last holiday with his family. After 19 days of testimony and about 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury came back. Judge George Gallagher read the verdict. The jury found that there was a probability Tanner Horner would commit acts of violence that would pose a continuing threat to society. They found that there were no mitigating factors in his background or in the commission of the crime that would justify a sentence of life in prison without parole. Tanner Horner was sentenced to death. He sat stone-faced at the defense table. When asked if he understood and acknowledged the appointment of counsel for his appeal, he said one word: yes. That was all. Under Texas law, Horner will be transported to the Huntsville unit, where death row inmates await execution. Texas carries out executions by lethal injection before sunrise on a date determined by the court. An appeal was automatically filed on his behalf, as it is in all capital cases in the state. Appeals in death penalty cases can take years, sometimes decades. Horner is 34 years old, but the family of Athena Strand was not thinking about timelines that day in the courtroom. They were thinking about her. Elijah Strand, Athena's uncle, stood up and faced the man who had taken his niece from him. He talked about what it felt like to see her running toward him with her arms open, screaming his name. He talked about the way that image lived in his head now, something beautiful that had been permanently stained by what came after. He said, the murder had left the family with an emptiness that can never be filled. He said, Athena was more than a headline. She was laughter, curiosity, kindness, and innocence. She had dreams that she would never get to chase, birthdays she would never celebrate, a life she would never get to live. And then he looked directly at Tanner Horner. He says, I want you to know that you are nothing. You are a footnote in Athena's story. Her name will forever be remembered. Her name will forever be celebrated, and everyone will forget you. Horner looked at him. Then he looked down. There is a photograph that prosecutors released during the trial. It is black and white, taken from the camera inside the van. It shows Athena Strand standing behind Tanner Horner as he sits at the wheel. She looks small. She looks uneasy. She looks like a child who does not understand what is happening, but knows something is wrong. Horner is not looking at her. He is focused on the road ahead. That image became one of the defining visuals of the entire case. A little girl in the last moments before everything was taken from her, standing just a few feet from the man who was about to take it. The Wise County community never forgot Athena Strand. In the days after her body was found, people left flowers and stuffed animals at makeshift memorials near the road where she disappeared. Schools in the area held moments of silence, one knows. Families who had never met the Strands drove out to Paradise, just to stand somewhere near where she had lived and feel something together. There is something about a child being taken in the middle of an ordinary afternoon during the most hopeful time of the year that hits people in a way that is hard to explain. It was not just the horror of what Horner did. It was the specific cruelty of the timing. A Christmas present, a front doorstep, a family waiting inside. It could have been any house. It could have been any child. And that is the part that kept people awake. In the weeks and months after Horner was arrested, FedEx released a statement distancing the company from the crime. Horner had been working as an independent contractor through a third-party service provider, not as a direct FedEx employee. The company said it was cooperating fully with investigators. The distinction between contractor and employee did not provide much comfort to anyone in Wise County. True crime as a genre tends to focus on the details of how something happened, the evidence, the investigation, the courtroom. And those things matter. They matter because accountability matters. They matter because the truth matters. But in the case of Athena Strand, the detail that stayed with most people was not forensics. It was not procedural. It was the sound of a 7-year-old girl, alone in a van, trying to reason with a man who had already decided what he was going to do. She spoke to him the way a child who had been raised right speaks to someone behaving badly, with logic, with conviction, with the certainty that if she could just explain to him that what he was doing was wrong, he would stop. My mom says, I can't do that to somebody. And you can't do that to me either. She believed in the rules. She believed if she named them clearly enough, they would protect her. They did not. Tanner Horner is now on death row in Texas. His appeal process has begun. His attorneys will likely spend years arguing that the death sentence should be overturned, that his mental health history, his diagnosis, his childhood, were mitigating factors that should have saved his life. The legal system will process those arguments in the slow and deliberate way it processes everything. And in Paradise, Texas, a family will keep doing what families do when something irreplaceable is taken from them. They will talk about her. They will celebrate her birthday. They will tell anyone who will listen that she was laughter and curiosity and kindness and innocence. They will make sure the world does not forget Athena Strand. One of the things that investigators noted early in the case was that Horner had a route, a list of addresses. He had been to other homes that day. He had knocked on other doors. He had handed packages to other families. The question that no one could fully answer, the question that perhaps no one wanted to sit with too long, was whether Athena Strand was targeted or whether it was simply and horrifically a matter of who happened to be standing outside when he arrived. The prosecution believed it was not an accident of circumstance, that Horner was not a man who panicked in a moment, that the story he told about accidentally hitting her and then making a series of panicked decisions in the following minutes was exactly what the district attorney said it was: lie upon lie, upon lie. What the recording in the van suggests is that Horner was composed, that he spoke calmly, that he asked questions, that he navigated what he was doing with a kind of deliberate calm that is far more frightening than a story about panic ever could be. After the sentencing, there were people outside the courthouse, supporters of the Strand family who had followed the case for years, reporters, community members, who had driven from Wise County to be there for the verdict. When the word spread that the jury had come back with death, there was not celebration exactly. It was something more complicated than that. There was relief. There was grief. There was the particular exhaustion that comes from sitting with something terrible for a very long time and finally reaching the moment where the legal piece of it is over. James Stainton, the district attorney, spoke to the press afterward. He had been carrying this case for years. He had watched that audio play in the courtroom. He had watched jurors cry. He had stood up in closing arguments and told 12 people that some crimes earn the ultimate punishment. He had gotten the verdict he asked for. But no verdict brings a 7-year-old girl back. Athena Strand would have been 10 years old in 2025. She would have been finishing up 4th grade, probably losing teeth, probably deep into whatever phase kids go through when they are figuring out who they are. She might still have been into Barbies, or she might have moved on to something else entirely. She might have started asking bigger questions about the world. She did not get any of that. What she got was 7 years. 7 years of running at people she loved with her arms open. 7 years of laughter and curiosity and questions. 7 years of dreaming about who she might become. And a delivery driver on a Wednesday afternoon in November 2022 decided that was all she was going to get. The case of Athena Strand is not a story with a satisfying ending. The death sentence feels like justice to some and incomplete to others. The appeals will stretch on. The legal process will do what the legal process does. And none of it changes anything about what happened on November 30, 2022 in Paradise, Texas. But Elijah Strand was right about one thing. The name people will remember is Athena, a little girl who ran with her arms wide open, who believed in rules, who told a man doing something unforgivable that he could not do that to her. She was wrong that day, but she was right about everything that matters. Her name will forever be remembered. Her name will forever be celebrated. Athena Strand, 7 years old, Paradise, Texas, November 30, 2022. Athena was more than a headline. She was laughter, curiosity, kindness, and innocence. Elijah Strand, Athena's uncle,